We could break 3,000 any hour now. It could be in a matter of hours, but it doesn't matter if we hit 3,000. It'll make some headlines, but that's what we got to really get over. The dollar amount doesn't really matter that much. I mean, we can have a party once it hits 3,000, but once it hits 3,000, then so what? Does that say anything other than it's a nice round number? Not really. What we'd have to see, what would really change things, is if we see gold going up and other assets going down, like bonds and stocks and the dollar index.
Gold breaking $3,000 may make headlines, but its significance depends on broader market trends. If gold rises while stocks, bonds, and the dollar decline, it signals deeper economic concerns. However, the impact is less alarming if gold climbs alongside other assets. A sharp drop in the Nasdaq on the same day gold surges would be a significant red flag for investors. Analysts at Goldman Sachs now project gold will reach $3,100 per ounce by the end of 2025, driven by substantial central bank demand and geopolitical uncertainty. As of February 21, 2025, market volatility is increasing, with the S&P 500 and Dow down 1.7% and the Nasdaq falling 2.2%. Rafi Farber, a precious metal expert, explains that, unlike in 2020 when gold and silver were flowing into ETFs like GLD and SLV, the current demand is for physical gold outside these funds. Borrowing fees for GLD have hit record highs, suggesting that institutions are willing to pay a premium to redeem ETF shares for actual bullion. This indicates that physical gold is becoming more valuable than paper claims. However, this situation is driven by banks and large financial players rather than retail investors, meaning it's a derivative-driven issue rather than a broad physical supply shortage. Since gold inflows to the U.S. are limited, this trend cannot continue indefinitely. Rafi Farber elucidates that the real issue with gold reserves isn't just whether the gold exists, but who owns it and how many claims are placed on each bar. There's a strong possibility that the gold has been rehypothecated multiple times for banking purposes, creating a complex web of ownership. If audits reveal multiple claimants per bar, it could lead to chaos. This ties into a broader issue: corruption fueled by inflation. After World War II, the U.S. established immense global trust, allowing it to inflate beyond its gold supply. This inflation seeps into every sector, corrupting systems like education by funding unnecessary programs, making true reform impossible without addressing inflation. We're about to explore the video, but first, subscribe and hit the bell icon to keep up with our newest uploads. Your feedback in the comments is always appreciated.
If I'm trying to figure out why someone would take gold from GLD or SLV, right? First of all, we contrast this with 2020. In 2020, gold was moving from London from London officially. The claims were London claims, but I think the gold was physically coming from Switzerland, most of it, to fulfill those claims. So in 2020, the gold was going mostly into the ETFs. Right? It was coming from London, going into GLD, the silver was coming from London, going into SLV. You saw the holdings of GLD and SLV just go way up with the price in tandem. Now, GLD and SLV are pretty much even since mid-December, when this huge runaway move started happening. Right? And the other hint that we have that something weird is going on in GLD and SLV are the borrowing fees, which was pointed out by Ronnie Stoffrli and some of the other big, and Greg Hemke, I think, pointed it out. A lot of the big guys in the space brought attention to this. What's his name? The name is the Destroyer, the Ronan Manley, Ronan the Destroyer, right? That's the guy. So he pointed it out also. The borrowing fees on these ETFs are, on GLD yesterday was an all-time record, 10.44%, if I'm not mistaken. So that means that people are paying to borrow GLD. They're paying a lot of money to borrow GLD, and they're presumably, I have no proof of this, they're redeeming baskets of shares for physical bullion and doing something with it. Why would they pay a 10% fee to do that? Well, probably because it's cheaper than getting gold at any other source. Basically, the difference between now and 2020 is that there's demand for gold outside of the ETFs to pull the gold out of GLD and SLV to put somewhere else. Somebody wants the physical more than he wants the paper claims. That's the difference now. In 2020, everyone was running after gold and running after paper claims, and it was also hitting the other difference. It was hitting the retail market. Right now, it's not yet. The premiums are still dead in the water. So that suggests that this is a purely wholesale bank derivative problem and not a physical supply problem. So it's slightly different, but similar creature. We'll see where it goes, because these flows can't last forever. There's a finite amount of gold to come into the U.S. from other sources. It can't keep going like this. I think the gold is there. What do I know? I'm not an intelligence officer. I don't work for USAID or the CIA. I don't really know exactly what's there, but I wouldn't be surprised if the gold is actually there, and the issue is who owns it and how many claims per bar or per whatever it is. I have a feeling that they would rehypothecate and they would encumber it multiple times for whatever bank purposes. So the audit shouldn't really primarily be focused on, is the stuff actually there? Can I see it? Can I hold it and weigh it? Okay, fine. But who owns it exactly? And so you got to find the paper trail, and that's the big deal. And if we find that there are many claimants on each bar, there's going to be some mayhem. I mean, this is a dangerous thing to do. The core of government power, of corruption, what causes corruption and what makes it so powerful is the inflationary process. It's not something you can just start, right? It's something that you have to establish huge amounts of trust and reliability for. And that's what the United States established after it basically conquered the world after World War II, defeated the Nazis, managed Europe, put together the West as we know it, put together the entire post-World War II political reality. And so everyone relied on the U.S. And from that power, it was able to inflate over the gold supply. And that inflation goes into everything. Everything that is corrupt because of the inflation. So you can't fix the education system without stopping the inflation, because the inflation will find its way into the education system to fund something that should not be funded. That's what it does.
Rafi Farber highlights the current financial system is still indirectly tied to gold due to historical pricing mechanisms and the regression principle, meaning all economic transactions trace back to gold. While the US dollar was originally a derivative of physical gold, it has since become primarily composed of debt. This debt, in turn, is ultimately a claim on gold at an outdated valuation of $42 per ounce, which is a widely recognized fiction. If the U.S. were to acknowledge this and revalue gold to reflect the massive expansion of the money supply, the actual exchange rate could be closer to $42,000 per ounce rather than $42. Such a revaluation would effectively devalue all dollar-denominated debt, wiping out trillions in assets held by banks and financial institutions. Since most of the dollar supply is built on IOUs rather than actual gold reserves, the sudden recognition of this reality would cause a catastrophic collapse of institutions reliant on debt. Regardless of ideological perspectives on money, gold remains the ultimate monetary benchmark. If its actual value is acknowledged, the entire financial system would be forced to recalibrate, causing significant disruptions and potentially destroying banks almost overnight. Now, let's redirect our attention to a video.
So that's what it is. It wouldn't exactly be a dollar devaluation. It would be a debt devaluation. This is what I've emphasized on, and again, maybe that's around my channel, on my Substack, since I began this thing, since I became like a talking head in the gold and silver space, that the gold standard never ended. We're still on it because of the regression principle, because of the Misesian regression principle, regression theorem. I prefer saying principle; it just sounds better. All prices reach back into the past. Every economic transaction that we engage in today is connected to every economic transaction in the past, just like evolution. Right? It always goes back to DNA recombining and meiosis and reproduction. What we are today is a result of every single relationship in the past, just definitionally. So you can't get away from gold. The dollar started as a derivative of the gold that existed somewhere, and prices evolved from there. The difference now is that most of what is the dollar is made up of debt to pay those same dollars, and it loops back in on itself. So a gold revaluation, gold is part of what the dollar is because because the issuer of the dollar, the ones who issue those things, the Fed has claims on gold and it has claims on debt paid in dollars, which are claims on gold, right? It all goes back. So on its balance sheet, it has this lie that everyone knows is a lie, and everyone just thinks it's stupid. That says that the gold that the Fed has a claim on, which is in Fort Knox and other places, that's $42.22. Ha ha! Isn't that funny? So that means that all the dollars that are owed in debt are redeemable for gold at $42, which they're not. So when you okay, so let me take this to a simpler analogy. That when, let's say your kid has a few coins in a piggy bank, right, and then your other kid, this just happened in my family, and somebody needs like a quarter, right? So he goes to his piggy bank, takes a quarter, replaces it with an IOU 1 quarter in the piggy bank, right? Is the IOU 1 quarter, is that part of the money supply? It's not part of the money supply. It's on par with a quarter. That means that whoever has this paper is owed 1 quarter. But if there aren't enough quarters, then how many papers do you need to get 1 quarter, right? If you keep issuing the papers and there's not enough quarters, so the paper isn't worth 1 quarter, it's maybe worth 5 cents, 10 cents, depending how many quarters actually exist, right? So most of the dollar is debt. It's debt to owe dollars, but to owe what? Like, what am I owing? And that is, you're owing the gold at 42. But if you say, oh, that's a lie, I don't have enough gold to redeem the $6.8 trillion that are on the Fed's balance sheet at $42 an ounce. There's just not enough gold in the solar system to do that. So we're gonna say this is a lie. We're gonna admit it, and we're gonna say, you know what, the exchange rate is actually 42,000, not 42. Because the amount of dollars has gone up 1,000 times. So what happens? The debt, those papers that said, I owe you a quarter, they get devalued to almost nothing, which means all of the institutions that own this dollar denominated debt, they lose all of that value overnight. Just because you changed the number on a balance sheet, it sounds so stupid, but that's what will happen necessarily, because whether you want to believe it or not, whether you want to believe that gold is money, or you think that money is just a social construct like gender or whatever, it doesn't matter what you think. Gold is money. So that's what will happen. It will devalue the debt, and all the banks that own that debt will die almost instantly.
The rising demand for physical gold, the potential for multiple claims on reserves, and the fragile nature of a debt-based financial system all point to a looming reckoning. If gold's value is recognized, the consequences could be severe, triggering systemic instability and reshaping the global economic landscape. Whether this shift happens gradually or abruptly remains to be seen, but its impact will be undeniable. How might governments and central banks respond if gold is officially revalued to reflect its market value? What are the potential warning signs that could indicate an imminent financial crisis linked to gold and debt devaluation? Share your feedback in the comments below. If you found this helpful video, hit the thumbs up and subscribe to keep up with our latest updates. We appreciate you being a part of this journey.